Ex-Inmates of Reddit, what was the stupidest thing you've seen a new inmate do on his first day in prison? Told a kid there was a pool out at yard. Guard saw him waiting to go out in shorts with his shower towel and asked him what he was doing. Kid said, "I'm gonna go swimming outside, it looks nice." Don't think I've laughed so hard in my life. It's unoriginal but always funny. This one is strangely wholesome. It's just funny light hazing. Worked as a corrections officer. Guy got busted for sexual assault of a minor. Figured everyone else in the tank was on similar charges, so began talking openly about it, feeling he was safe. We had to subdue 5 guys who jumped him in the rec yard. Guy was sent to the hospital as he was fairly unresponsive. He was sent to protective custody after that. A lot of people in jail have history of being sexually abused. It makes it personal for them. Edit. Survivors are more likely to experience a host of mental health problems, including drug abuse, delinquency, crime, depression, suicidal thoughts/actions, and many more. In regards to the topic, adult survivors are more than twice as likely to be arrested for a property offense than their non-abused peers. 3% versus 4%. As adults, child sexual abuse victims were almost twice as likely to be arrested for a violent offense as the general population. 24% versus 7%. Males who have been sexually abused are more likely to violently victimize others. Add in the fact that men were most commonly molested at age 4, may not even remember, or have repressed the memory, and you have a recipe for individuals who feel ducked up and angry all the time for no reason, and not know why. If I'm reading the statistics right, an estimated 2/3 of those in prison for violent offenses were victims of sexual abuse in their lifetime. Many won't remember or admit to themselves or others that it was the D2L org. Dude in my state recently murdered 2 child molesters behind bars. Said they were unrepentant and has in for life anyway, so why not remove some evil from the world permanently? Those child molesters would have one day been set free. And this was a dude in for murder during a drug deal. Arguably killed a nice guy. Has face tattoos and is scary looking. But everyone hates child molesters. Kid came in and he has watched a lot of movies cause he figured he'd fight the biggest guy on the range. Lol. He wasn't even the toughest guy in the hospital he woke up in. He had watched a lot of movies cause he figured he'd fight the biggest guy on the range. When little Timmy stole a car to go to space, he said he didn't make it very far and went to jail instead. A prison's full of fearsome folk, his father warned him. Rough, you have to make your mark, he spoke, to show them all you're tough. So, Timmy chose the biggest 6 and loudly, proudly cried, "I hear you've all got tiny ricks," and Timmy ducking died. If you expect to be able to take hits like they do in the movies, you're in for a bad time. One punch to the head from someone who's halfway decent in a fight can kill a man. Obligatory not me, but I know a guy, and his cellmate was a young 19-year-old kid. The kid was confused, and in the course of talking about their lives admitted he was bi. The guy I know told him, "Hey man, that's cool, but don't tell that to anyone else in here, seriously. I saw this show with a gay prisoner in it. He wanted to be in solitary. Somebody tried to rape him, so he grabbed their balls and squeezed hard. Then, with balls still in hand, he twisted them and flipped himself over." Kids outside literally do not get that when you're in prison, it's best not to chat that much about your life. You don't have to be an antisocial recruit, but too much info can hurt you or your surroundings. Tell literally everyone how he was going to escape and showed off all the tools he was using. Was he stopped by the other inmates or by guards? This idiot walked right into a Mexican gang meeting and almost got beaten up. Source: I'm the idiot. Edit. I was in jail, not prison. My mistake. Again, I'm idiot. Second edit. Since many people are asking, from what I understand, the difference between prison and jail is this. Jail is for sentences of less than a year, whereas prison is for sentences of over a year, varying from state to state. Jails is run by the city or county, prisons run by state or federal government. You can go to jail to await your trial before sentencing, then after be sent back to jail or to prison depending on how long and whether it's a felony or not. Prison is for felonies. How did you get out of that one? Not shower for weeks. He got his clothes ripped up and he was thrown half naked into the showers. They also tuned him up pretty good. Did anyone know why he refused to shower? Like, was he just gross, or was he afraid soap would be dropped? Had a group do this at my facility. Didn't beat the guy more than they needed to, but they dragged his stanker to the showers, turned on every faucet, and left him there until he washed himself. Rumor has it the co's made sure to not be on patrol and busy with something else during. Kid gets booked in, hits the unit and starts borrowing food and other commissary items. Before he knew it, he was $200 in the hole. Problem is, in jail and prison, most people who are willing to loan items out expect 2 or 3 of the same item back. Yeah, I know, interest. Very easy way to get yourself indebted is by borrowing any food or other items. Never get in debt while incarcerated. I had to look at what you can buy at the commissary. How do you make money in prison? I won't lie. If it wasn't for the weird duckers in prison, it doesn't sound that bad. If you got rid of all the rapist and violence. Which I get it, the whole system is like 95% Wikimedia org. Not an ex-inmate, but an ex-co. Dude came in on drug charges. First thing he does upon walking into the pod is announce loudly enough that I could hear that he got drugs past the dipches is an intake. Yeah, not the brightest bulb, that one. Lol. Was he telling the truth, or just bluffing? Skinny kid, hippie type got busted with some weed. Someone else on the range was getting beat up for something or other, and the kid tried to intervene. Just said hey, leave him alone, got beat to within an inch of his life in the shower. Pro tip, in jail, mind your own business. Pro tip, in jail, mind your own business. I was still in intake in NSP, Nevada State Prison. A little dude came in touting Abch's Aryan Brotherhood. So an ab sent him on a mission to beat someone up, an old man. The old man beat his A. I got to the yard, a black dude came into our unit, barking at a white dude about money owed. I was the only black dude in the unit. Black dude looks at me and says, Osiris, we go accept this chiz. I raised up off my rack and said, I have to live here, dog, and laid my back down. Pro tip, in jail, mind your own business. Sounds like a good dude. Reach across someone's food. Is this a matter of courtesy, or do people have to warm you're gonna duck with their food if you reach over it? Call his grandma and just cuss her out and talk her like dogches because she didn't want to put her house up for collateral to bail him out. Anybody do anything to teach him manners, or just mind their business? A slight twist, we had a pink wet floor sign that we would put up in the entrance to the showers, so everyone knew there was someone in there jerking off. The fun game was to watch the new guys, myself included, innocently walk into the entrance to the showers that very first time, past the pink wet floor sign, and then see him come skittering back out a few moments later. Was there ever a time where the guy didn't walk out? I like this one. It's weirdly wholesome. I don't know how, it just is. Goofy looking kid, curly hair, thick glees. He comes in, and for some reason he befriends me. He starts telling me what he did, sexual assault of a minor. I told him not to be telling nobody that chiz, because it'll get you in trouble. The rest of that day and the next, I bailed out. By then, I could hear him from across the hall telling other people. Not surprised if he's been kicked around a few times. Lol. I read this wearing my curly hair and thick glees. Thankfully I'm not goofy looking though, so it doesn't apply to me. Excuse me, sir, there seems to be a mistake. I'm supposed to be getting out of prison today. You're in the wrong line, Dumber. Crucifixion. No, they said I done nothing wrong, and I can just go home. Right, off you go then. When the skinny little street thug white kid walked across the yard and threw a Mayan asterisk at a bench full of full-blown Crips. Didn't see him much after that chiz storm. Not in jail, but when I was living in LA I was at a park, and no joke some white kid did this as a joke to a group of black guys and they beat the chiz out of him. I was 10 I should nope the duck out tather back to my house. Lol. The suburban thug white boys were far and away the most annoying cats in prison. Always begging for PC, always needing moved, always getting themselves into trouble. Father-in-law did 12 years on a second-degree murder app back in the very early 90s. He told me that one time this new guy plopped himself down at the Hells Angels table and started eating breakfast. When he was told to move, he ignored them. After breakfast, the co's ended up having to cut through about 6 rolls of duct tape to get the guy loose. He never sat near the Haas again. Cut through about 6 rolls of duct tape to get the guy loose. For some reason I didn't expect the Hells Angels to respond like Jock Brothers. That was surprisingly merciful. Admit that he was in for sexual assault and being a pedo. And then it was about 8 PM and we found out he was a chronic masturbator and he would not stop jacking off in his bunk. He was 22 and it was jail, not prison, so at that moment, we had maybe 12 to 15 people in our cell. Some guy woke up from a nap and thought he was having a seizure, so he went to go check on him. What a goddamn shock they both had. Edit, spelling and grammar. I feel this would not have ended well for the pedo. Please continue. Till there's a difference between jail and prison. One guy bragging about what he did to get himself in jail. Other dude showering barefoot. Great way to get convicted. Great way to get jungle fungus. My first time and I went to take a shower for the first time. I got undressed and was about to step in when like 6 people all started yelling at me. Put some ducking shoes on, dumber white boy lol. After that I bought some shower shoes. Hey op, I hope you have a good first day of prison tomorrow. Op, don't forget to sharpen your pencil while taking notes. If it gets blunt it'll be hard to read your handwriting. Not me but my dad. Guy came in bragging out what he did. Said he was a monster and the toughest guy around and that he could take anybody on in the pen. Giving him the benefit of the doubt, he apparently was a big and tough guy. Come to find out though, he was in for the assault, rape, then murder of a woman and her child. He might have been big and tough, but not after 5 big guys beat the absolute chiz out of him and practically killed him. As most of you know, the one thing all prisoners can agree on is that anyone who messes with kids or women are on an immediate hit list. Edit, the women thing might have just been a rule amongst him and the PPL he ran with. Unfortunately, it's only kids in my prison. Where I was in prison they utilized 40mm soft round launchers to respond to group disturbances. Let me tell you, they weren't soft. Kid comes in thinking he's still hardcore from juvenile hall because guards there didn't do anything when people fought. Decided to up and join a gang that he knew nothing about on his first day, thought he was tough, and started to diss the gang they had high tensions with at the time, and started a group disturbance. Co's respond, tell him to get down, he refuses and curses at them. Boom, 40mm to his face. Was an accidental shot to the face according to the co. Face was distorted as hell after. Fractured skull. On his first day. Those 40mm less lethal rounds are ducking serious. If you gave me the chance to get pepper sprayed or shot with one of those things, I'd pepper spray myself every time. Edit. Chances non to less lethal because you can still die from getting shot in the wrong place. A lot of juvie baddies get a come to Jesus moment when they get to big boy jail. So my dad's currently convicted and the craziest story he has told me is one of the newer inmates was young and arrogant. Always spouting off bullshit about how unaccountable he was. Then one day, another inmate packed up his items, went into the younger inmate's cell, and tried to strangle him. The younger inmate was that ducking annoying. He survived. The attempted murderer is in maximum, and when the younger inmate came back from the hospital he was still spouting bullshit. Packing his stuff up in advance is really what makes this story. Bullshit spouters are pretty much wired to be like that. They are literally an endless spout of which bullshit just keeps coming out indefinitely. There was an old myth that if you challenge the meanest guy in your block to a fight everyone else would leave you alone. It's true. No one will torment you if you are dead. Kid tried it and got dropped off the 5th tier. First day in Gen Pop, last day in Gen Pop. Most guys just want to do their time alone. Most rape and violence in prison is about debt or tax. If you play it straight 98% of guys will just leave you alone. Ducking someone up on the yard makes your time worse, not better. Loss of privilege, of time in solitary. Most people don't want that. Most of the straight up psychopaths are in 23/1 lockdown anyway. You get in debt or shoot your mouth off, and you will get settled or taxed. Both are to be avoided. Did he die? Got busted for smoking weed with two buddies. When we put in the holding cell, one of them wanted mark the event by carving his name in the paint on the cell door. When we got put in a cell later, they came back and took him to solitary for a week. How much weed do you need to smoke to end up in solitary? Saw this weird, unshaven, scraggly young guy with a yellow beanie once who said he agreed with the Latin kings on social issues, but fiscally he was more of an Aryan. He ended up joining both gangs. Damn it, Todd. What is this? A crossover episode? This weird guy named Robert from the TV show 60 Days In has a couple stories that could be in this thread. The stupidest may have been when he covered the prison camera with a sheet. Went to solitary 30 days. He quit the program halfway. He's the dude that said this is like a vacation for me when he was in solitary. That ducker and his attitude was beyond infuriating to watch. I wish they had let him get ducked up. Not wearing shower shoes in the shower. Gross. That's where everyone jacks off and comes all over the floor, not to mention WE disease they've got. Not gonna lie, my first thought wasn't that but foot fungus. Yeah, I went to jail once and at first I thought it was strange that the inmates kept warning people to wear shoes in the shower or your feet will get pregnant. What a weird way to talk about fungu. Oh, they beat off in there. Eat the candy bar found on his pillow. Is that bad? What does that mean? What happened after? There was a new guy who came in one day. You could tell he was gay by his mannerisms. A few days into his sentence, he was forced to suck a guy's rig. He bit it off. I was not ready for that twist. TBF, if you force someone to suck your ick, you deserve it to be bit off. Punch the biggest guy on the block to establish dominance. How did that go down afterwards? This may not have been his first day, but I will never forget this. This while I was in the intake tank, which is the first tank or section you go into after being processed in county. This young kid comes into county and keeps complaining that he doesn't get his cannabinol and other marijuana related prescriptions in jail. He was really arrogant and constant pissing everyone off. During count one day as we were all in our bunks, he starts complaining again and then says to the guard, what if we all riot immediately like 10 other guys yell very loudly we don't know or agree with him. The guard then says, what the duck did you say? The kid then continues about rioting and that he has rights. Everyone in the tank ducking stays like frozen in their bunk, trying their best to be non-threatening and also show they have no interest in what this moron is saying. So the guard picks him up by his throat and slams him into the wall. After scaring the kid shitless, he explains he has a new charge for inciting a riot. Kid gets hauled off to solitary. Never saw him again, but I heard he spent the rest of his 30, 60, 90 whatever amount days in solitary. Absolutely insane to me that he'd say that in a ducking county jail. Some people are just idiots. Just going to generalize. Small town folk who are used to being the biggest and baddest. Big fish small pond types who think they are going to be king when they walk in. They usually are dominated pretty quickly. Dominated being either beat or made into a bitch. Best bet if you go to prison, hopefully no one ever goes, is unless you know someone well connected on the inside. Just keep your head down, focus on yourself and your time. It's going to be boring, menial, and seemingly endless, but you don't want to get caught up in any gang stuff or be snitching. There's a code and system in prison that needs to be followed, and if you walk in like inches of Turd Hill, when you are a nobody you will learn real quick that you ain't nothing. If I recall correctly, this is the first episode that delves into prison politics from the podcast Ear Hustle. While Ear Hustle takes place inside and now outside as well, San Quentin, it seems like the common politics are at every prison regardless of level. Incredibly interesting podcast. Eater, spelling is hard. Saw in one of those jail documentaries, young man about 18. Had no gangs affiliation of any kind, was in for some kind of minor crimes. Decides to try to impress the Nazi people by lifting weights with them. He tries to do leg presses, turns out he couldn't even lift 100 pounds and barely got any reps done. The whole Nazi gang laugh at him while he was doing it. Edit. Someone linked the clip. They actually laugh at him for not lifting 240 pounds, not a 100. How ducking skinny were his legs if he can't leg press 40 kilograms? I found a hypodermic needle in my thin mattress and tried to go give it to the guard. I was bum rushed by an inmate, whose it probably was, and told that if I had given it to the guard, I would have faced a pee test and solitary. This was day 1. On day 3 I asked to trade laundry detergent for a back rub, and only after I did so did I realize that everyone thought I was gay. I was a very dumb 18-year-old white girl. Wait, you offered the back rub or you asked for one? Used a salad fork with his entree. Hoo boy, the Latin kings were vexed. Used a salad fork with his entree. He looked with distress where they stared from above, a circle of men only mothers could love. They waited in silence. They watched while he sat. He turned to his salad. They said, "Not like that. You're using the wrong forkies. And remember to use the right spoon with your caviar, stupid." Start a fight that she couldn't finish. The fight finished her instead. Guy came in, got on the top bunk. Within 10 minutes dude rolled off it and smacked his head on the concrete. Started to have a seizure. Guards eventually came and just videotaped him for a while in the middle of the room. Eventually they walked him out when he stopped, but then he ran into the wall and fell down, then started to seizure again. They just kept filming. Nobody really thought he was having seizures, but he hit his head pretty bad, so they took him to the infirmary. What the duck? Went in when I was a young idiot. Our pod was all bunk beds, no cells. Just the room with beds and a side room with the TV. It was a unit for all the people working the same job. New guy comes in, little white dude, quiet and kept to himself. Until one night, out of nowhere he starts sprinting around the room singing at the top of his lungs in the tune of Black Sabbath's Iron Man, but changed the lyrics to "I'm the N-word man." Running through the hood from the Ku Klux Klan. Everyone was just kind of frozen for about 15 seconds, seriously confused. Then someone tripped him, and then it was just mayhem, until the co could get enough help to disperse the crowd. I remember being surprised he survived. Everyone in the unit had steel toe boots for the job we did, holding them and hitting him in with them instead of wearing and kicking. The scene afterwards where all the guys are trying to figure out whose boots are whose and comparing who's had the most blood was freaking surreal. I did 14 years in federal prison for wire fraud. I got out last February. I'm 36. Some things I can say are these: while your sexuality may not be an issue outside of prison, inside prison, male inmates who are openly gay are generally disrespected. Gambling and drugs create debts that are at some point unable to be paid and can result in serious issues for yourself. Most prisons operate a social hierarchy based on gang affiliations or hometowns, although there can be large separations based on race. However, rapists and child molesters will basically be free game for anyone who wants to take their chiz or torment them. You might have been a badder outside of prison, but generally you can't fight several people at once, which is what would happen if you talk about how much of a badder you are. Keep your chiz to yourself and don't talk crazy to people, which is seen as disrespect. Respect/disrespect has a different meaning in prison, and you'll figure it out. Best to just keep to yourself, unless as much as possible, unless you want to embrace prison life and become institutionalized. Prison is not a place to make friends. Guy thought the hot pot was for everyone and went to medical with his jaw broke for talking chiz when he got called out. Who is the hot pot for? Chiz all over a suicide cell to make a point, then stuck in there with their masterpiece. I worked an intake at the city jail and witnessed a mentally ill woman use her menstrual blood to paint her cell. Also, I worked as the janitor. That was a fun job. I wheeled my cart to the stairs with my footlockers, mattress and pillows on it. I carried up my footlockers and shut my cell door. I forgot my mattress downstairs. Somehow, no one had stolen it by the time I had the cops open my cell door and I went down to get it. It probably just got swapped out. We used to have that chiz happen constantly at my facility. There were probably 10 different mattress variants in use, and, as is the norm, some were nicer than others. If you had one of the nicer grey ones, nobody would duck with it once it was on your bed, but if you left it off unattended, you'd get back to find one of the deflated, blue mats with suspicious yellowing around the middle inside 30 seconds. I got bunk restriction while I was in jail on one of my first night. Twice a day they did roll call, where we all had to sit on our bunk. Be quiet while the officer came bunk to bunk and checked all of our wristbands and made sure we were all who we are. Halfway through he was doing this, someone rips the loudest, fattest, longest wet fart I've ever heard in my life. Me having the mind of a 5-year-old burst into laughter. I've never heard a fart like this in my life. A few other guys laugh, but even thinking of it now I giggle about it. Anyways, the officer is like, alright, settle down, but I can't stop laughing about it. He tells me to calm down, but I tell him through my tears of laughter I literally cannot help it. I really couldn't. It was the funniest thing that happened the few days I was in there. Anyway, he gets pissed. I try to explain him not trying to be rude and disobey him through my laughter, but he isn't having it. Luckily he just gave me bunk restriction and didn't punish everyone, but I could see the TV from my bunk, so I just hung out the rest of the night. TL. Doctor, I couldn't stop laughing at the biggest fart I ever heard in my life and got grounded to my bunk for a night. Edit. Obligatory. Wow, my top comment is about farts. Me could be worse. Every reply is from a movie or TV show. Lol. Yeah, I think ex-convicts aren't the type to turn to Reddit as a post-prison hobby. A lot of posers here who love creative fiction writing opportunities. Not true. On my first day in prison I just snarled and said, I am not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me. And everyone just backed off and left me alone after that. Also, they gave me free ramen noodles. My family attorney told me about one of his clients who was sentenced to 2 years for a federal case, non-violent. Someone gave him really bad advice about how to survive in federal prison. He followed the advice and found a big tough looking guy on the very first day. He beat him up severely. The victim turned out to be a tough looking guy who was actually a gentle giant who didn't fight back much. Ended up with 2 broken legs and a fractured rib. My attorney's client got 4 extra years added to his 2-year sentence. That's what I call stupid. This was about 15 years ago. Not sure if the guy survived prison or not. That guy just beat up Big Hug Bob. Let's get him. Edit. It makes me happy almost 900 people got this reference. Here's one from a good friend of mine, we'll call him T, who spent half his life inside. Picked a fight with the local inmates over something minor to establish dominance. The guy was European, and Europeans were kept separate from locals with good reason. There would be full-scale gang wars between the two sides now and again within the prison. None of his fellow Europeans backed him up. Hell, some of them even jumped in on kicking the ever-loving chiz out of the newbie. T doesn't think the guy made it. Not an ex-inmate, but my mom's friend is a retired prison guard for a maximum security prison. He'd been there for a long time and a lot of the inmates liked and respected him. There were a few instances where new inmates would try to be difficult or attack him to impress the older inmates. The newbies would get beat up pretty good and wouldn't cause trouble for him anymore. Don't mess with well-liked guards. I have a buddy who's worked in prisons, and it seemed to work the same way. Not like on TV shows where all the guards are heads. This guy was genuinely nice, but could duck someone up if need be. But he told me he never really had to. He'd just let the other inmates deal with the batter. Dude was talking non-stop chiz about gay guys and how he would never have relations with another dude. Gay guy named Alexa, Cheetahs is what they are called in Arizona prisons, knocked him out, and he woke up to getting his rick sucked by another man. No way this is true. New dude got sentenced and came over to the felony pod to levels. We are playing spades, and this dude says, man, I can't wait to get out to hear my partner in spades. Asked how much time he has. New dude says something, man, I got 4 months. My spade partner just stood up, smacked the cards out of his hand, told him to STFU and stop bitching about 4 months. He then said, I got ducking life, now what? And proceeded to beat his A. Co took his sweeter time too. Maybe not the stupidest, but don't talk about your crime. I don't know a single person who didn't talk about their crime. If you don't talk about it, people will start getting suspicious that you're not willing to talk about it because it's something that falls into the pedo/rape category. What if it's a cool crime? Pretty much just hearing younger guys lie trying to impress. Odds are if you are real G, then you can tell who's who. The ones who get caught lying are the ones who have the hardest time because trust level is low to begin with. Include lies and yay. I'd say this is mostly for JDCs, but county jails and prisons have the same problem, I'm sure. Long but funny story. I worked for a PD. We arrested a local regular on an outstanding FDA warrant. The guy was always a putter. The county jail was full, so we're contracted with an adjacent county jail nicknamed the Workhouse. It was old and nasty and had a much tougher urban clientele. It took about 45 minutes to drive there, and on the way, the prisoner was being chatty. He asked me to do him a favor when we got to the jail, which was, don't put me in with any of those GDN *****. We get to the jail and sit the prisoner on the bench. There is a large black woman working the intake desk, and she and I process the paperwork. 15 minutes later I'm headed out the door when I stop and look at the prisoner on the bench. I turn to the woman and say, oh yeah, I forget. He has a request. The prisoner starts violently shaking his head no. The woman chuckles and says, oh yeah, what's that? I repeat his request, that he doesn't want to be put in with any GDN *****. Her eyes get real big, and she smiles at me saying, yes sir, I'll take care of that. The prisoner looked like he was going to par out. She immediately called for 2 guards who came from the back dragging logging chains. These were 2 black guys who looked like they were linebackers in the NFL. I smiled at the prisoner and walked to my cruiser. I love Karma. She's such a bitch. A new guy was in his 50s and had developed addiction problems later in life. He somehow thought that his age afforded him control of the remote for the only TV on the range. The 10 inmates that rushed his cell kicked the living shiz out of him and threw him down the stairs felt otherwise. Asked a friend of mine who I was in rehab with, said, dumb young guy comes in and borrows money, not able to pay it back. The sound of him being raped was horrible. What the duck? Current correctional officer. We had a brand new inmate who'd never been in jail before. He was given a lightly used mattress that had been sewn up and sent back to our open dorm. About 30 minutes into it, he calls a central control saying that his mat had a lump in it. Yes, just like the Princess and the Pea. An officer goes back to check it out. Sure enough, there's about a thumb-sized lump in this dude's mattress. The co opens the sewn end of the mat and finds a black package. For those of you not familiar with correctional lingo, this refers to an object typically ovular in shape that is wrapped in black electrical tape, commonly used to transport contraband via the rectum. He takes the package and the mat and comes back up to intake. 5 minutes later we get an emergency call out for a fight in that housing unit. 4 old timers, inmates who've been there a while, jumped the kid and were calling him an officer, and when we were escorting him out they told us to make sure he put an application in. The package ended up being a small amount of tobacco, which is a pretty common find for us. That kid never came back to jail. Probably for the best. So this actually about me. My first day inside I sat down at a table in my block. Some guy came over and said it was his seat. Me being young and dumb thought I'm not gonna get punked on my first day, so I told him it's my seat now. He walked away and came back with 3 other guys and they beat me pretty bad. Believe it or not, I was the one who got the mark for it too. Guard wrote it down as I initiated the fight, spent some time in the hole for it too. Some guys told a new guy that if he told the guard he was suicidal, the guard was obligated to give him a cigarette and let him smoke. What really happens is they take away all your chiz, throw you in a turtle suite, and put you on suicide watch for 2 days in an empty cement room. I hated jail, but goddamn I had some laughs in there. He dropped the soap. Everyone was laughing at him. For the rest of his stint the rest of the inmates called him Klutz. It all worked out for him though. He moved to Canada and started an extremely popular tech tips YouTube channel. OMG, I wasn't expecting that. Linus Tech Slip. More stupid employee. A good friend, Steve, worked as a locksmith for a medium security prison, a really unpleasant job apparently. He bid on and got the job as groundskeeper. He was the only actual prison employee and his 4-man staff were trusty prisoners. The job was overseeing grounds using tractors, hand mowers, and lawn equipment. Some minor repairs were allowed, and the shop had tools for repairs. The groundskeeping HUD was not on the actual prison grounds, but had its own unmonitored employee driveway and employee entrance. There was separate locked fenced driveway that went directly into the prison. This was how the prisoners and equipment came and went. The trustees were only searched when they returned to the prison grounds, either on the mowers or when returning to their cells. Otherwise the groundskeeping HUD was not frequently inspected. It was a plum prisoner job. My friend bought an older Harley which ran but not well. One trustee was a made motorcycle gang member and my friend and he bonded over motorcycles. One day Steve brought his motorcycle to work and showed it to the trustee. The trustee listened to the motor and said the bike needed bearings, which means an overhaul, a $4,000 job. If Steve could bring the crew in an hour or two before they were supposed to return to their cells, the trustee felt he could use that extra hour to overhaul the bike in a few weeks. And in the first days he totally disassembled the Harley's motor. Later that day, while returning to the prison, the trustee got caught smuggling in a small screwdriver, which meant this trustee crew would never return. Steve knew the groundskeeping HUD would be inspected the next morning, and he got the motorcycle frame and wheels onto a pickup and taken out the shop. He didn't have time to get the motor parts, which he could claim were leftover lawnmower parts, but he knew that unmistakable motorcycle frame with wheels was his termination. The next day the inspectors glanced at the parts, made him take all the extra parts to a secure dumpster. He was reprimanded for not inventorying tools daily and having loose mower parts. The Harley was toast, but he actually kept his job. Here in Canada, there isn't really any rape in prisons, as they look at it like, how can we beat up or kill sex offenders if we are ones ourselves? It was my first time in a federal pen and I didn't know this golden rule. The first day I got there I was assigned a cell, and when I went in, this older guy was in it, my future cellmate. He told me the guy who had the bunk before me wasn't really a clean guy and I should get some disinfectant and a mop, and pointed me in the direction of the cleaning supplies room. I went in, and I was filling my mop bucket when I looked up and noticed these kind of shelves on the wall that said Government of Canada on them. In the shelves were condoms and lube and bleach. My eyes widened and I went back to my cell and whispered loudly to my cellie, what the duck, they are encouraging rape? I told him about the condoms and he laughed. Bro, there's gay guys in here who have consensual sex and it's their way of stopping HIV. We just use the bleach to clean our tattoo needles and dye our hair if we get bored. Goddamn, Canada is chill as duck. Taking off his shirt, showing a large illegal symbol on his chest, and then approaching a couple of black inmates and beginning to work out in front of them. It ended with him being violated in the shower by the people he thought he could trust. That sounds familiar. Get their soul sucked out of their body by a dementor. Former co-here. I was in what's called the intake building. When people would come in for their first day, I would hold their papers in my hand, all official like, put my shoulders back and loudly announce, "Gentlemen, line up, toes on the line. Welcome to building 5. You will remain in your cell for 2 weeks. Your property will arrive within 1 week. If it doesn't, you may then let me know. At this prison, disputes are settled on the yard with a dance-off competition. If you have an issue with someone, let us know, and we will provide cardboard. Now everyone, on the count of 3 you will do 10 jumping jacks." And occasionally a first timer would do 1 jumping jack and everyone would laugh. Saw this fat white kid who became Muslim, and then moved into a 4-man cell with 3 black guys in Walla Walla. The next day the co's were photographing the blood-soaked mattress out on the tier for all of us to see. The fat white guy was considered a race traitor because he converted to Islam. Did they move him out of that cell after what happened? Don't talk. Bookin', shut your mouth. Be where you're supposed to be, and don't touch anything that isn't yours. Don't ever gossip. I can't stress that enough. There's number 100% way to stay safe, but the above is about the best you can do. Standard dumb chiz is people either trying to be a tough guy or thinking they've got a friend. Both roads lead to the same end more often than not. Hello electronic voice YouTube channel. Hope you don't mind me watching your video later. BC, what else am I supposed to do in quarantine? I hate those videos. They suck. Never been an inmate, but I did work as a jailer for a short period of time. I was always assigned to the felony pods, so I knew there were a certain number of guys in those pods that really didn't give a duck, but I didn't drag guys around or be an a-hole for no reason, so I was well liked by most of the inmates. One guy came in his first trip to the slammer because he got zaned out and drove into a gas station, then proceeded to snack some cigarettes and other convenience items. I often consider the lifers to be the most laid back, especially the older ones. Don't duck them, and they won't duck you, but mess with them, and they mess back hard. So this day I was sitting at one of the tables chatting with a couple of the older long-term residents, and this new guy comes in and sits at the table. The old timers ask the new guy, so what are you in for? This ducking kid never even looks up and just says murder. I knew what he was in for. He knew what he was in for, and these other two well-experienced prison attendees knew damn well he wasn't there for murder. One of them almost snatched him from across the table. I intervened quickly and explained to the kid that this experience could be as cheesy as he wanted to make it, or as simple. He could lay low and be in and out and back to his regular life, or he could enter this darker world by being a smarter when asked a simple question. I'm sure he was just scared, being his first time in, and wanted to maybe make a big bad impression, but telling two killers that you killed when you barely have hair on your nuts is a very bad first step. If I recall correctly, he stayed in 3 days waiting to bond out, and he didn't leave his cell other than to grab his tray and scarf down his food. He never even looked toward the shower. Seen a guy flood the day room shower to take a bath, complete with a duck made out of TP. This was in county. Prison was what you would expect, but county jail is where the real cheese show is. Not prison, but jail. I was getting put in irons with a tiny little chiz next to me going to a court date. He looks at me and says loud as duck, "What did you do?" I looked at him and said, "We're going to our arraignments, are you ducking, stupid?" It's sad when the co's and eps laugh out loud. I ducking hated that chiz. Only went into intake twice in my life and roared and bailed out, respectively, before I was egged a cell, but both times I was only in the intakes for a grand total of 5 ducking seconds before someone asked me what I did. I chiz on a cop car, dude. WTF do you think? Use your imagination and mind your own business. Noobs always be letting people give them free chiz. Next thing you know, they're crying on the phone thanks to extortion. He refused to give up his cornbread. You gonna eat your cornbread? Man, it really depends on the block you're in by how much you can get away with. But one time we had someone who got kicked out of another dorm for snitching on someone get placed in our dorm and immediately got his a beat. And also fake claiming you're in a gang is a very quick way to get jumped. And also don't owe people money. Left the little kiosk thing logged in under his name and others viewed his charges. Lewd behavior with a minor, I believe it was. Dude got his knocked out. A older inmate like 60 years old or so brought in a Santa sack-sized bag of food items acquired from canteen from cell block B into block C, which is the good behavior unit, hoping it would buy him immunity. News got around within minutes that he was in for battery on his ex-wife and then got rolled for the sack of goodies. Guards looked the other way and laughed. Not prison, but jail. It was always dumb stuff that we would prank them with. One example is having someone get a look at their name on their wristband and then going to the phone like they were answering it. They would then yell the new guy's name and look around. The new guy would finally say, "That's me," and then the guy on the phone would say, "Oh, here, it's for you." When the new guy walked over and said hello, the whole pod would start laughing. You don't get phone calls in jail. Another was messing with new cellmates. One cellmate and I had been cellmates for a while, so when we got a third in our cell, we'd lay down a cell schedule for him with all ridiculous things such as, after lights out, we did 200 jumping jacks every Wednesday. We'd get to Wednesday and tell him to slide his portable bed under the bottom bunk and start doing jumping jacks and counting them off. They would 100% of the time join in, and we'd usually get to 20 or so before we couldn't contain our laughter and then explain that there was no cell schedule or jumping jacks. One time, I had been in for about a year of 15, a total 15 months, and had some clout at that point. I'm not a harder, but can handle my own, and had only been in 2 necessary self-defense fights in that time. With more time in jail comes certain privileges. You get a better seat by the TV. You get into the front of the line for meals, etc. A new guy came into the pod that day and I heard the door click open for food to be served, even though most people were already lined up after the announcement to line up. I went to the front and got my food first, as did others with much more time than most. This is jail, not prison, so anything over a year is a fairly long stay in the county I was in. Apparently this new guy didn't take too kindly to me, specifically going to the front. He started staring at me for the rest of the day, a mean mug, if you will. I took a shower, and when I got out, an inmate came up to me and told me the new guy told him that he planned on just straight up sucker punching me. Here's the thing. Don't ever tell anyone that, especially if you're new and don't know anyone. I was well liked throughout the pod and didn't have problems with anyone, for the most part. I was generous to those who were hungry. I was a damn fine card player. I had a sense of humor and wasn't a hard A. I didn't tolerate disrespect from race to race, and I sure as hell didn't plan on getting sucker punched. So, I, in front of the whole pod, said, "Hey, man. I hear you've got it in your head that you're going to sucker punch me. Is this true?" He said it was true. I politely asked him into myself for an actual fight, not some bitch a sucker punch. Don't go into someone's cell for a fight, BTW. Who knows what they have prepared to attack you with. I didn't have anything but my fists, though. I proceeded to beat the chiz out of him. Like, he didn't get a single shot in on my face. His head and face was left bloodied and lumped. I will say that when the guards asked him what happened at dinner, he didn't say a word about me. I guess the dumb things he did was A, not respect privileges that come with time in, and B, thought a sucker punch was the answer and told someone about it. Hello robotic YouTubers who will inevitably use this post for easy content. I watched a kid walk into the very public 300+ inmate shared showers with his bare feet. We were the last tier out that night too. Set a serious tag NXT time. Did dropping the E in next save you a significant amount of time? Not prison, but I was in juvenile hall. This was in Minnesota, and racial division isn't as strong up here, so even though I was half white half Hispanic, since I was loosely affiliated with a blood gang, I was allowed to walk with the black guys in there, but I mostly kept my mouth shut and only got into fights when someone put hands on me. So this bigger black dude comes in for our alt, and since he was a crip he was beefing with the group I was in, and he starts talking chiz about how our group was weak for having a white kid in it, and took shots at me. He got cocky and started pushing me around, so I pushed him back, and then he tried to tackle me, but I got him in a front face lock and kicked my legs back to drag him down, and as soon as I had him locked down I started pushing my fist into his throat to choke him out. Eventually we got broken up by 2 guards and NGL. I was ducking terrified, but he got made fun of so much for losing to me, not only because I was white, but he was bigger than me, that he immediately lost credibility after that. There were 6 of us per cell, 3 thin metal bunks drilled against the left and right side walls, about 3 feet apart in height between each bunk. The bottom bunk was 3 feet off the ground as well, and we only had 1 empty top bunk left on my side, and that chiz was like a 9-foot climb. To get on it, 6th guy gets admitted in and starts demanding a bottom bunk, which I had one of them already. He was about 58, maybe 140 lbs. Mind you, I'm 62, 215 pounds, so he looked small compared to me. The guy on the other bottom bunk was much bigger than I am. Dude was easily around 66, probably pushing around 260. We both just started at him. He grabbed the phone in the cell and started slamming it repeatedly against the box. Since we weren't paying attention to him, he must have watched some sort of movie or stupid prison guide or something, cause he went straight for the other guy screaming and yelling. Bigger dude then got up from the bunk and walked toward him looking like a damn grizzly bear. He snatched the phone out of his hand and smacked the chiz out of him across the face with it. He must have knocked the soul out of the little guy, cause he had him sitting on the toilet for like 2 or 3 days straight, only getting up when one of us had to use it. His cheek was bruised for days too. He tried to sneak up to the top bunk in the middle of the night once, and the bigger dude grabbed him by his pants and pulled him straight off. He hit the floor pretty hard next to me, and the guy told him to go sit back down. He requested a cell change, and of course it was denied. All in all, it was one hell of warm welcoming. Worked as a CO for 5 years, and the dumbest thing I've seen was a young wangster wannabe gangster comes in and starts asking this one guy what's he in for, and guy just straight up backhands him. big pimp hand power, and starts yelling for us to get young guy away from him. We separate them and get young guy to a different seating area, and he just wouldn't keep his mouth shut. He also kept claiming to be affiliated with the house stone, and he saw someone from his, so he sat with him. But real gangster did his own investigation and found him out. Young guy got his a beat once again. We found out young guy did have tattoos that closely resemble the same tattoos as the house stone Tango Blast, but he obviously wasn't affiliated in any way. He complained to Hadley that he wasn't supposed to be here. Didn't become friends with Morgan Freeman. No context, he straight up just slammed his head on a wall moaning for a good amount of time. Tell his whole life story to the biggest psychopath who owns all the guards in the prison and had switched the room with his real cellmate for the one night just to duck with the new guy. The kid not only spilled out his personal information, used the dude's smuggled cell to text his girlfriend too. I don't think anyone ever taught him not to trust strangers, at least not in a federal prison. Female lieutenant was checking body tats as part of the intake process. One dude was a pretty boy tatted head to toe. She's writing all his tats down, seeing if any of it's gang related inches. Then dude just straight up drops the jumpsuit. I'm sure he had tattoos on his tube steak. Caught a major case his first hour into TDCJ. This was in Huntsville at the holiday unit. Not where they shower shoes in the ducking shower. 2000, UK. Two lads came on the wing dressed in pink and green bright fluorescent shirts and pinstripe pants. Within 30 seconds most of the cons were lining up taking potshots at them. One made it into a cell pretty quick. The other made the mistake of running into the screw's office thinking he was safe. In reality the only screw on the wing was playing table tennis and laughing along with the rest of us at the fact these guys voluntarily got dressed that way that morning. This one ducking guy waited till the guard was in the bathroom, then absolutely blasted classical music across the yard. We were all like, yo WTF, never really saw him again. Actually telling people he was there for hitting his GF. On the yard some Polish guy went up to every single man and shook hands and introduced himself. Hello Impavel. Some chomo got moved to our block. Can't remember if he was new or not, but we all knew he raped a little girl and was in this time because he violated his parole by being at a library. He apparently told someone he was allergic to green beans and offered them up at lunch. The next day, everyone in the block, 32 of us, was told to give their green beans to this inmate, who was basically the tough guy who happened to be Chomo's current cellmate. That night, he shoved all of them down Chomo's throat. Chomo moved blocks later that day. No one got in trouble. The stupidest thing I've seen on someone's first day of prison is my own first day. I came in so addicted to Xanax and heroin I was puking and chisting both green fluid, shaking, sweating. My temp was 104. My entire body felt like every single individual bone was breaking, and I've broken bones before I know that pain. But the worst part wasn't that part, it was the psychotic chiz. I was hallucinating, seeing people that weren't there, hearing people that weren't there, talking to people who were never there at all. I was having awful panic attacks, waking nightmares, terrors. I was also having heart palpitations, and after a while I started having seizures. It was at this point, specifically this point, that the medical staff decided they should probably get involved and give me an anticonvulsant before I die in this ducking cell with like 6 other dudes in it watching me. That was all I got though, nothing to ease the withdrawals at all. Even something like Suboxone would stop my heroin withdrawals after a couple days of being clean and you can't get high off it. But they literally don't care. So it went like that every day for weeks. Don't do drugs, and if you do, remember severe Xanax withdrawal can very likely cause death. And severe Xanax withdrawal truly never ends, it can and will do permanent things to your psyche. Many people who abuse Xanax get clean, and months after the withdrawals get a thing called rebound anxiety. Xanax artificially reduces anxiety, which means your brain compensates by not releasing or producing and storing the chemicals to reduce anxiety. Every time you take a Xanax you rob your brain's natural ability to reduce anxiety. And many people who never had mental health problems before will be diagnosed with severe anxiety disorders after severe long-term benzodiazepine use. Duck that chiz. Not me, but my dad was a co. He told me a story of a big guy who was relatively new who tried picking on another guy who was much smaller than him, only to have his handed to him by the little guy. Asked my friend what his was. He told me on his first day he went to his cell and brushed his teeth and the shaving cream looked just like toothpaste and used it. I'm gonna go a different route and tell to that ended without serious violence first. Kid, maybe 19 or 20, in our 40-man GP tank had told everyone when his birthday was, and they made damn sure to mark it down. In jail, you don't get birthday spankings, or pinches, or tickles. None of that silly chiz. You get birthday punches. He looked like a walking bruise the day after second. This guy was like 40, but was kind of fried, and had obviously never been incarcerated before. Anyway, he came into the showers without wearing his slides. To make things worse for him, there was about 20 of us in there showering at that time, so word spread quick, and he got so much chiz for it. Had a kid, maybe 20 to 21. Try to pick a fight with me cause him big. Goddamn movies. Making people stupid. Just a funny one. Telling new guys to get their mattress stamped. They come in, and we would tell them they had to bring their mat up to the guard and get it stamped with their name and bunk number. They go up to the bubble, mattress in tow, and the guards tell them there is no such thing. They turn around to 100 dudes clapping and laughing. Went in on marijuana charges in Custer County, Oklahoma, has 120 pounds. Befriended my cellmate, few DUIs, talked about what was ducking us up on the outside. She was prostituting, and her social worker was paying, and talked her through her steps to get out. Making goals, and shared my food with her. I eat like a bird. Someone came in our cell to chat/gossip, since she had a blunt and related. When she was out, and I told her thinking people are talking chiz, almost started a full-blown fight. Then when people were giving me chiz for no reason, taking my seat, I guess was what did it, she almost started a fight over it, and people started forming sides like 1v6. Girl kept going lol. Ducking natives. I appreciated her a bunch. Made my first time easier. If you want an unrelated story, was in our pod. There was a twerk contest between a white girl, black girl, native, and Asian. Winner got cookies. Was fun to see them get along and have a good time before the coast came in. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.